at the beginning of UFC, it was met with a lot of criticism, and it has successfully turned into one of the main fighting attractions in the world. And when you go back to when it started and you compare it to Power Slap's beginning, which you are living, you're experiencing right now, how would you compare the process of getting this league accepted the way that it was with UFC?
It reminds me, it's identical. It's exactly the way the UFC was treated in the beginning too. You know, people don't want to hear that. People don't want to think that, but it's absolutely true. I mean, we didn't have media covering the sport for years. And, you know, we had to rely basically at that time, it was the internet. There were chat sites and things like that that were dedicated. There was a chat site called The Underground, and it was all about MMA. So we've put a lot of our focus into that. Now these days for Power Slap, it's social media.
And you also tweeted about that. So what came through your mind when you found out this is happening here at home?
Yeah. So I was not happy to see Power Slap being promoted by Dana White. It's one of those things that until you sort of like, my day-to-day now is dealing with athletes and veterans who have had too many brain injuries or are fighting potentially CTE. And I've now, our brain bank that Boston University and Dr. Anna Key leads has now diagnosed CTE in nearly 1,000 athletes. You know, this disease you get from too many hard hits to the head. And so that being my day-to-day, then to see brain injuries being given out like they're a joke for entertainment, this is a line that I don't feel that as a society we should cross, and I don't feel that as, you know, adults who are around these activities should be promoting. And as a society that we should make better choices about what we promote to people and what we do to people. Because I'm sure that when people who get knocked out or get brain injuries in Power Slap, when they start having problems, when it might affect their ability to work, affect their marriage, affect how they raise their kids, it's not like there's gonna be someone there to take care of them. You know, you as an individual carry the burden of your brain injuries for the rest of your life, and those around you suffer. So it's just something it shouldn't be. And so I just let that be known.
Doctors weighing in and some determine that CTE is the most common problem they see with this. What was the process for Power Slap to determine that it was safe enough to proceed with this?
If doctors had their way, there'd be no football, there'd be no soccer, there'd be no boxing, there'd be no UFC. You know, listen, in contact sports, this is a contact sport. Hockey, I mean, we could go on with all the contact sports that if doctors had their way, they'd say that CTE is a problem. So Power Slap, where there's no sparring, they only slap each other, you know, 3 times for a night, and that's it, it's over, is more of a risk and more dangerous and should be banned before boxing? First of all, 2.5 months out, these guys start training and preparing for a fight, right? They spar multiple times a week. Then they get into a fight and they take anywhere from 300 to 600 punches in a fight. But slap is a problem? I mean, really, when you really think about it, and if you're educated about fighting, it's actually a ridiculous statement to make. For guys that are going to come in and these guys are going to compete maybe 4 times a year and they slap each other a maximum of 3 times, you're telling me this is a massive problem, but boxing is not. It's ridiculous. It's a silly. If you are a doctor and you're actually making that claim, you're ridiculous. And you're probably that guy that wants everything to go away, including soccer.
So in simpler terms, how can a slap affect the brain? Like, what is the physical damage, internal damage? Because you mentioned we don't see the blood, but there is something happening inside. What is it?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And if there was blood, we probably wouldn't let this happen. So a brain injury is sort of happening in you can think of it in 2 ways. One is that there's an energy wave that goes through the skull into the brain and causes the brain to malfunction. And that's why you see these people get hit, and they don't even move yet, they're already unconscious. This energy wave has caused their cells to sort of, it's almost like a small seizure, right? So there's that, and then there's also the physical brain injury that comes when your head moves really fast. So your brain, is soft jelly and it doesn't want to stretch. And when you twist the brain real fast, you cause axons to pull apart, some of them to tear. And now you're talking about physical injury that down the road could lead to something like CTE. So there's sort of two ways it's happening, and it just looks benign because they just fall asleep, right? But it's actually it's a mess. And until I had them myself, I didn't realize how serious concussions were.
I was looking to see if there was a study of a measurement of how fast and how strong these slaps were. Like, you know what I mean? Like how fast are these going, and what kind of impact are we getting, if that's even possible to measure? Is that such a thing available?
No, I mean, you could put sensors on people and slap them to see how hard the sensors are. I'm guessing that no medical school would allow that sort of research to be conducted on humans because it would be considered unethical. We do put sensors in the helmets of football players, and we see that they're hit, up to about 150 Gs of acceleration, which is pretty extraordinary. But if you think about those hits, like one out of every, if you got to hit 150 Gs, like most of the time it wouldn't cause you to get a concussion, and even fewer times it caused you to be knocked out. So the idea that many people are being knocked out in power slap, that there's people maybe every episode being knocked out, I'm not sure, I don't watch, but that means these people are taking hits that are just really extraordinary.
Ask them about this and the kind of trauma that this might cause based on the type of impact. And there's situations where the strikers are missing the area where they're supposed to hit, so they can go maybe higher up a little bit. And I asked them about, like, okay, has there been any type of studies of the G-force or the power into, whenever the striker is hitting? And he said that it will be even unethical to even study that because of, putting in sensors and stuff like that. So my question really is, like, what studies has even power slap done to figure out the potential harm? I mean, you have to be also conscious.
Unethical. It would be unethical for him to even test it. What about boxing? What is the force of boxing and taking 400 to 600 punches per fight? The guy's ridiculous, and he's looking for attention. That's my opinion on Dr. whatever his name is.
Do you guys currently have any protocols in regards of concussions?
To do the testing. Yes, we do. These guys do the same exact testing and protocol that the UFC fighters do when they don't take anywhere near the damage that UFC fighters do. UFC fighters take punches, elbows, and knees to the head. Would it be unethical for him to do testing on that? I mean, was this guy a lunatic? I mean, that's the most ridiculous. These are the type of doctors that I talk about that are either one of two things. One, they're the guys that want no contact sports whatsoever. And that includes soccer and hockey and all these other things, which I get it. If that's the way you feel, that's the way you feel. But you still don't have the right to tell a grown man or woman what they can or can't do with their life, number one. Number two, or it's a doctor who just is looking for attention, wants some clicks, wants guys like you from the LA Times to mention his name and say, Dr. whatever his face is, thinks that this is unethical to even test the fighters. And these guys go through the same exact protocol as the UFC fighters. We've been doing this brain study that we've been doing with the Ruvo Clinic here for years. We do it with these athletes too. Obviously, safety is our number one priority. Let me start with this. In the 23-year history of the UFC, hundreds of thousands of fights, right? Never been a death or serious injury. Okay? Why? Why is that? You know why, Dr. whatever your name is? Because we spend the money to make sure that we have two healthy athletes that go in there and compete. We make sure that we spend the money to have the proper medical care here and the proper medical care after they fight. We spend a lot of money on health and safety, on power slap and on the UFC.
No, the reality is we're still creating CT in athletes. So no, we have not changed nearly enough. And we're also just not, there's still sports who try to claim, like the National Hockey League or World Rugby, that their sport isn't causing CTE. So we have a long way to go. We have made some progress, like the NFL and the National Institutes of Health and the CDC now all say that, you know, head impacts cause CTE. So there is some progress, but it's slow. And I think we need to do a lot more, because we make a lot of cosmetic changes. You know, the NFL is going to have fewer kickoffs next year, but that's not going to stop CTE. We have to change the whole system to do that. And people aren't really ready to take that sort of risk, because people don't like change, and they're worried that people won't play if they know the truth.